My dear friend, let's be honest with each other for a moment. Have you ever felt your heart tighten because of a careless comment, a dismissive glance, or a thoughtless gesture? You know it shouldn't matter. You tell yourself it's nothing, let it go. And yet your chest tightens, your jaw clenches, and there it is, the anger rising again. The interesting thing is, it rarely comes from the big wounds in life, not the devastating betrayals, not the deep losses. More often, it's the little things, a sharp tone, a mocking smile, a seemingly harmless remark. And just like that, your peace disappears as if someone has stolen it from you. I remember a patient of mine, a man in his early 60s. He told me that every morning on his way to his volunteer work, if someone cut him off or honked at him, his heart would race and his temper would flare. He knew it wasn't worth it, but he couldn't stop himself. One day he sighed and said to me, "Doctor, how can a complete stranger out there decide the mood of my whole day?" Have you ever felt the same way? The answer I shared with him, and the one I want to share with you today, is a principle from ancient Stoic philosophy. No one can truly harm you unless you hand them the power. You see, they are not stronger than you. But when you lose your temper, when you lose control, you hand over your power to them. And this isn't just lofty philosophy. Modern neuroscience has shown that when we react instantly in anger, the brain releases stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, that make our heart race, our blood pressure rise, and our body go into fight or flight mode. The frightening truth is, the older we get, the harder it is for our nervous system to return to balance after those surges. I've seen many patients over 50 suffer heart problems not from great tragedies, but from small stresses repeated over and over. So the question is, do we really want to spend the rest of our years being dragged around by little things, or do we want to stand firm and choose to be in command? The ancients, the Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, believed that true freedom doesn't come from controlling the world out there, but from controlling our response within. That is the real strength. I want you to picture this. You're sitting in your living room reading the morning paper. Outside, the neighbor blasts loud music. You have two choices. One, let the irritation rise and ruin your whole morning. Or two, you smile, take a deep breath, and think that noise doesn't define my day. I define it. Same event, two completely different outcomes, one a slave to emotion, the other the master of self. One thing I often tell older patients is this: we've already lived through half a lifetime. We don't have the luxury of wasting what remains on meaningless anger. If a stranger can steal your peace with just one careless word, then you've given away your most precious gift, your life energy. So our journey today is not about becoming someone who never gets angry. That's impossible, we are human. But we can learn to recognize anger before it explodes, to understand its true source, and to choose our response instead of surrendering to impulse. And trust me, you are not alone on this path. I've seen men and women in my clinic all wrestling with anger, whether from family work or small social slights. But once they learned to observe emotions like a passing stream instead of being swept away, their lives began to change. Another patient, a woman in her 70s, once told me, "I used to think getting angry proved I was strong. But now I realize calm silence is the real strength. It makes people stop and listen instead of running away." Do you see yourself in her story? I want you to think about the last time you lost your temper. Was it because your grandchildren didn't listen to a careless coworker, or your partner said something that hurt? Ask yourself, was the anger really about that moment? Or was it all the weight you had been carrying before? Because anger rarely comes from just one instant. It's accumulation, like cracks in a dam. And sometimes just a feather landing on it is enough to make it burst. And so the first lesson I want you to carry today is this: watch, closely recognize it before it turns into an explosion. You see, we don't need to be philosophers nor saints. We just need to start small, a deep breath, a 3-second pause, a gentle smile when someone says something foolish. And little by little, those moments build up until one day you realize you are no longer so easily pulled away by nonsense. My dear friend, I want to tell you a truth that many people overlook: anger rarely appears out of nowhere. It's like a big wave on the ocean before it crashes on the shore. There have already been countless ripples gathering far away. If we only see the final wave, we think it's sudden. But in reality, it's been building for a long time. I remember a patient in his 50s named John. He often complained that he would explode over very small things. Once, just because his wife left the keys on the table, he got so angry that the whole evening was ruined. When we talked, I asked, "Do you think the keys were just the last drop?" He stayed quiet for a long time, then nodded, "Yes, doctor. The whole week I was under pressure, work, stress, car trouble, the kids not calling. It all piled up. The keys were just the spark. Have you ever been like that? Anger doesn't come from a single moment, it comes from accumulation. We often think we're reacting to the present, but really we're reacting to unresolved weight from the past. Scientists call this stress layering. It's like carrying a backpack where every day someone puts in a small stone. On the first day you hardly notice the weight, but by the 50th stone the backpack pulls you down. And then just one tiny pebble is enough to break you. The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago. They taught that an outburst isn't strength, it's overflow without control. Seneca once wrote, "Anger is a brief madness," and he urged us to recognize it before it takes over our reason. So what can we do? First, observe the pattern. Notice when anger usually shows up for you. Is it rushed mornings before coffee? Is it during meetings when coworkers interrupt? Is it in the evening when you're tired and someone demands more? I tell my patients, especially those over 50, to write it down. Don't rely on memory, because emotions blur our vision. Right. Today I got irritated in traffic, or I snapped when the grandkids were too loud. After a week, you'll see a pattern emerge. And once you see the pattern, you're no longer powerless. Picture your mind like a dam. If you ignore the small cracks one day, it will collapse from even the lightest touch. But if you notice and repair early, the dam will hold strong even through a storm. Another example, one of my patients, a 68-year-old woman, told me, "I used to think I was just born short-tempered. I always told myself, that's just who I am. But when you asked me to track my anger, I realized I usually lost my temper at the end of the day when I was hungry and my legs ached. It wasn't my nature, it was my body crying out." Just by noticing this, she changed. She ate a snack before chores, practiced deep breathing when she felt pain. And, amazingly, family arguments dropped dramatically. You see, anger is not who you are. It's just a pattern you've repeated without noticing. And like every pattern, it can be broken. The key is, instead of telling yourself, "I'm just short-tempered, I can't change," remember it's a habit, not your identity. And habits can be changed with patience. I want you to try this next time you feel your shoulders tighten, your jaw clench, or your breath quicken. See it as a signal. Let it be a bell reminding you, stop, observe. You can choose differently. And the moment you make a different choice, you've laid the first brick of self-control. The Stoics never told us to be emotionless machines. They told us to be observers, not captives. That is true power. So I want to leave you with this question. Where does your anger really begin? At the moment someone says something foolish, or in all the cracks you've ignored throughout the week? When you can answer that, you'll realize you are no longer a victim of anger. You've become the one holding the key, my dear friend. There is a truth many people don't want to admit. We rarely get angry at the thing right in front of us. Most of the time, what we see is just an excuse, while the real cause lies much deeper inside. One afternoon, I met a patient named Richard, 65 years old. He came to my office with a tired face. He told me that lately he had been snapping at his wife. If she forgot to buy milk or repeated a question, he would get irritated. But when we sat down, I asked him, "Are you sure you're angry about the milk?" He stayed silent for a long time, then whispered, "No, I'm angry because I feel like I'm becoming invisible in my own family. I retired. I don't have the same voice I used to, and those small things only awaken that fear in me." You see, anger is often just a mask. It wears the name milk or a harsh tone, but underneath it is the feeling of being abandoned, the fear of losing control, the fear of no longer having value. Psychologists call this secondary emotions, meaning that anger often hides a more primal feeling, fear, shame, or sadness. The Stoics also said this long ago. Seneca wrote, "No one gets angry over a small thing. That small thing merely touches an old wound within." Have you ever felt that way? When you yelled at a loved one over something small, but really what you wanted to yell at was life itself, at injustice, at the pressures of work age or responsibility. One of my patients, a 70-year-old woman, admitted, "I wasn't really angry at my husband for forgetting to take out the trash. I was angry because I felt I was carrying too much and nobody noticed that I was already exhausted." That reminded me of an image. Anger is like a pressure cooker. Outsiders only see the steam hissing when the lid rattles. But in truth, the heat has been building inside for a long time. If we only focus on the lid, we miss the fire beneath. So what can you do to see the real cause? A simple but powerful way is to pause and ask yourself, what am I really angry about? Am I angry at this or at everything that's been piling up behind it? I often tell my patients to keep a short journal. It doesn't need to be long. Just a few lines. I'm not angry about the broken lamp. I'm angry because I feel helpless that I can't fix it myself. That small difference in naming helps them face anger instead of running from it. Modern science also confirms this. When you correctly name your real emotion, the part of the brain responsible for stress calms down. Researchers call this affect labeling. In other words, when you're honest with yourself, anger begins to lose its grip. The Stoics believe the same emotions are not the enemy, they are messengers. We only become slaves when we refuse to listen. If you see anger as an alarm bell, you begin to ask, what is it trying to tell me what is missing in my life? I want you to try a small exercise. Next time anger rises, don't rush to shout or suppress it in silence. Instead, sit down, close your eyes, and ask, what fear is behind this anger? What sadness is here? What emptiness is it pointing to in me? You may discover that you're not angry at your son for forgetting to call. You're angry because you feel lonely. You're not angry at your coworker for a joke. You're angry because you fear you're no longer respected. When you see this truth, you stop fighting with shadows. And when you touch that truth, you have the chance to heal instead of repeating the same cycle: irritation, explosion, regret. I want to leave you with a phrase I often remind my patients: don't treat the flame, find the gas leak. What you're angry at is not the surface, it's the deeper wound inside. Only when you have the courage to face it can you truly set yourself free. My dear friend, next time anger comes, remember it is not your enemy. It is a messenger knocking to show you a deeper truth in your heart. Don't chase it away. Listen, and then you will see peace return. My dear friend, have you ever felt like a target for every word, every look, every attitude around you? A short email from your boss, and you think he's upset with you. A neighbor doesn't say good morning, and you assume they look down on you. A teenager drives recklessly on the road, and you believe they're deliberately trying to provoke you. The truth is, they're not. 80% of the things that hurt us have nothing to do with us. But when we take everything personally, we make ourselves prisoners of other people's emotions. I remember one of my patients, a woman in her 60s who often felt sad because her daughter didn't call often. She said, maybe she doesn't love me anymore. When we sat down, I asked, are you sure? Or is she just overwhelmed with her own life, her work, her kids? She was silent. A week later, her daughter called crying, I'm sorry, Mom, I've just been exhausted, but you're always in my heart. That's when she realized her sadness didn't come from reality, it came from her own assumptions. Have you ever done that? We put a microscope on every action of others and conclude it's aimed at us. But most of the time, people are simply busy with their own lives, hardly thinking about us at all. The Stoics had a beautiful word for this state: apatheia. It doesn't mean cold indifference, but rather the ability to remain unmoved by what lies beyond your control. They believe that when you are no longer wounded by small things, you become truly free. Imagine a rock in the middle of a river. The water crashes against it all day long, but the rock does not shatter, nor does it grow angry. It simply stands steady and unmoved. Others may bring noise, attitude, or words, but you can choose to be that rock. Another patient of mine, a man in his 70s and a former soldier, told me, when I was young, I treated every criticism as a personal attack. I fought every word. But then I learned most people speak from their own pain, not because of me. When I stopped taking everything as an attack, I began to feel peace. Do you see the truth in this? When you take every word as about you, you'll suffer endlessly. But when you realize others are just reflecting their own worries, fears, and pressures, you no longer have to carry their burdens. Science also gives us insight. Humans naturally have an egocentric bias, the tendency to believe we're the center of everything. But in reality, most people are preoccupied with themselves. That short email, that cold look, even that harsh comment, often they have nothing to do with you. So what can you do? Next time someone acts unpleasant, pause and ask yourself, is this really about me? Or is it just their burden spilling over and I happen to be nearby? Most often, the answer will be, no, it has nothing to do with me. And the moment you realize that, you reclaim your peace. Remember, when you stop taking things personally, you become free. Others may lose control, but you don't have to follow. Others may shout, but you can choose silence. Others may be cold, but you can choose to smile. My dear friend, don't let your life be ruled by shadows that aren't real. Your peace is too precious to give away to every look, every word, every careless action of others. Choose to stand like a rock in the river, not because you are cold, but because you understand your worth does not lie in anyone else's emotions, but in your own self-mastery. My dear friend, there's a small habit that has saved me and many of my patients from unnecessary anger. It's the habit of asking one simple question: Will this still matter 5 days from now? It sounds simple, but its power is tremendous. I remember a patient named Linda, 63 years old. One day, she told me she had been angry with her husband all day just because he forgot to take out the trash. She felt furious, scolded him, and they didn't speak the whole evening. When I asked Linda 5 days later, would that trash can still matter? She laughed, no, definitely not. Then she sighed, and yet I let it steal an entire day of my life. Have you ever been like Linda? We let small things, a careless word, a car cutting us off a late meal, consume all our energy and joy. But when we look back days later, we realize they carry no real weight in the bigger picture of life. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "View everything as though you are looking from above, from far away. Then you will see how small and fleeting it truly is." Modern science says the same in a different way. Our brain tends to magnify problems when under stress. In stress mode, the nervous system scans for threats, so even the smallest inconvenience can feel like a major danger. But in reality, it's just a delay, a nuisance, a blunt word, nothing more. That's why whenever anger rises, I want you to pause, take a deep breath and whisper to yourself, 5 days from now, will I even remember this? If the answer is no, smile and let it go. Don't let something forgettable steal your peace. If the answer is yes, then address it, but with calm, not explosion. I remember another patient, a retired engineer in his 70s. He told me when I was young, I often exploded over little things, a wrong report, a careless coworker. But looking back, 90% of what I was angry about, I can't even remember now. All I remember is how many joyful days I lost. He smiled bitterly. If only I had asked myself back then, will this matter in 5 days? You see, life is already short. After 50, 60, each day becomes precious. So is it worth it to let a trivial mistake or someone's small flaw ruin a whole day of peace? The Stoics had a way of life I truly admire. They treated each day as a gift, never to be cheapened by the trivial. And the question, will this matter in 5 days, is like a compass to keep you from losing your way. So I want you to try this starting today. Next time you feel your blood boiling over something small, pause and ask, in 5 days will I remember this? In 5 days will it affect my life? If not, let it pass like the wind. If yes, face it calmly, like a true leader. My dear friend, the truth is, most of the things that upset us are nothing but emotional trash. They don't deserve to be stored in your heart. Don't turn your soul into a warehouse of garbage. Keep it as a garden, nurturing only what truly matters. Remember, your time is more valuable than your anger. Your peace is greater than any small irritation. And one simple question can help you protect an entire day of your life. Will this still matter 5 days from now? My dear friend, there's a truth I believe anyone over 50 has experienced. Sometimes we react too quickly and later regret it. A careless word that hurts a loved one, a slammed table that frightens the grandchildren, or an angry glare that makes the family atmosphere heavy. Anger strikes like lightning. You don't even have time to think before it flares. But once it passes, you look back and ask yourself, why couldn't I stop for just a few seconds? I remember a patient named Thomas, 67 years old. He told me that once, because a cashier at the supermarket miscalculated his bill, he exploded shouting in front of everyone. Later, he sat in his car for an hour, ashamed and regretful. He said, if only I had paused for just one beat, I could have avoided all of it. Have you ever been like Thomas? What makes us regret is not the anger itself, because anger is a natural part of being human. What makes us regret is failing to create a pause between anger and action. The Stoics believed emotions are data, not commands. We have the right to see them and then choose how to respond. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, you cannot choose what happens, but you can always choose how to respond. And the pause is the bridge from instinct to choice. Modern science calls this the neural pause. When you take a deep breath and count to 3, you're giving your brain a chance to shift the signal from the instinctual amygdala to the rational prefrontal cortex. Just those few seconds can change the entire outcome. I often advise my patients something very simple. When angry, keep your mouth closed and breathe. You can clench your fist, inhale through your nose, hold it for a moment, then exhale slowly. Those 3 seconds can save a conversation, a dinner, even a relationship. One of my patients, a 72-year-old woman, told me that she used to snap back whenever her husband nagged. But since practicing the 3-second rule, breathe in, slow down, she feels much calmer. She laughed honestly, just 3 seconds, and I avoided hours of arguing. You see, pausing is not weakness. On the contrary, it's the strength of maturity. An angry child yells instantly. A grown man or woman pauses, observes, and then chooses how to respond. Think of anger as a spark and your reaction as gasoline. If you pour gasoline immediately, the fire explodes. But if you pause, step back, you'll see often if you just let it be, the spark dies out on its own. So I want you to try this next time you feel heat rising in your chest. Take it as a warning bell. Say nothing. Do nothing. Inhale, hold for 3 seconds, exhale. Then ask what action truly serves the person I want to become. My dear friend, the truth is, sometimes strength is not in quick retaliation, but in intentional silence. And every pause you create is a brick that builds a solid wall of self-control. Remember, the pause is the distance between regret and peace. The one who can pause for a moment has already conquered half of their anger. My dear friend, many people think their anger comes from others being too annoying, too selfish, too demanding. But the truth is, most of our anger doesn't come from others being too much. It comes from us not drawing clear boundaries. I remember a patient named Robert, 61 years old. He told me that nearly every day he felt frustrated with coworkers because they always asked him to do things that weren't his responsibility. He did them, but inside he was boiling. One day, I asked Robert, "Have you ever told them directly you can't do it?" He hesitated, then admitted, "I was afraid they'd think I was selfish. So I stayed silent and endured." And the result? He became a prisoner of his own silence. Do you see yourself in this story? When we don't dare to say no, we open the door for others to step in and clutter our emotional space. And when everything feels messy, we explode. But that anger isn't entirely their fault. It's because we never set the limit. The Stoics believed you can't control other people's actions, but you can control what you allow. Epictetus once said, "No one can harm you without your permission," and often that permission begins with our own silence. Another example, Evelyn, 68 years old, told me she always felt irritated when her son called at 10 p.m., asking her to babysit early the next morning. She usually said yes, but inside she was resentful, and she carried that anger into the family breakfast. When I asked, "Why don't you make it clear that 10 p.m. is your rest time?" she paused for a long moment, then nodded. After that, she started saying, "I go to bed at 9:30. If you need something, let me know earlier in the day." The result, their relationship improved, her anger lessened, and her son learned to respect her schedule. Psychology agrees people set their expectations based on what you allow. If you always say yes, they assume it's fine. If you never push back, they think you don't mind. And so anger builds up in you until it explodes. My dear friend, setting boundaries doesn't mean you're selfish. It's an act of respect both toward others and toward yourself. When you say, "I don't take calls after 8 p.m. or "please don't talk to me" in that tone, you're not pushing people away. You're building a fence that protects your peace. The Stoics understood inner peace begins with outer discipline. Marcus Aurelius didn't waste time trying to please everyone. He knew what was his responsibility and what wasn't. That was the key to avoiding pointless anger. So I want you to think about this. Is there someone in your life constantly crossing your boundaries? Is there a situation where you often get angry, but only because you never clearly said what you need or what you can tolerate? If so, practice saying it directly, not harshly, not in an argument, just short and firm. Remember, every time you set a boundary, you build a fence to protect your inner peace. My dear friend, your peace is not someone else's job. It's your responsibility. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not to shout, but to smile and say, "This is my boundary."